Andrew, if your dad was here, what would you say to him?
Go to your doctor. Go to your doctor, man. We should. I think in this country, like, 'cause men like love sports. We should say, hey, you're not allowed to watch any sports. Like, we should like struck up a deal with like all the like networks and say, hey, no sports, no fun activities until you go to your doctor's.
Hey, JKP crew. I'm so excited for y'all to get to know Andrew. He is the CEO of LiveChair Health, and it's a community healthcare platform. Andrew's such a relaxed, chill, a straight shooter. I really enjoyed getting to know him. He tells me about what growing up on the south side of Chicago was, how he came into entrepreneurship, how important his dad was in his life, and what losing him was like, how he's processed that, and what he would say to his dad today. Really important listen for everyone, and especially men, in terms of healthcare and how precious it is for each of us. Enjoy. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Jennifer. Nice to meet you.
It's great to meet you. I usually ask all our guests if they have an item of comfort. I am taking this from my living room. You can see my plants in the background, which make me feel just so relaxed. And I'm just curious what your item of comfort is.
So I am a man of faith, but I didn't bring my book that brings me comfort. But today I did bring my tea. I am an avid tea drinker, specifically loose leaf teas. I do like bag teas for travel. And I'm still steeping tea right now because I just got a fresh batch. So
you're fancy. You got the loose leaf with the teaspoon, the fancy spoon. I love it. My brother's like that too.
Yeah, I'm a pretty try to be pretty healthy and live what I preach or what we offer to people.
Yeah, and I'm really stoked to get to learn all about it today. Wanted us to get started, Andrew, with taking it all the way back to where you got started in life. So where you grew up and what those formative moments were for you that formed you into the human being that you are today in adulthood. So let me start by asking, what was growing up like for you?
Yeah, for me, I would say it's very tough. I mean, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and if you do any, Google researching or YouTubing, you'll understand the challenges growing up in those neighborhoods. So we being my siblings, we saw all of the activities that surrounded us. But I think our parents did a really good job of inculcating us and putting a shield around us so that we wouldn't make a foray into those activities many of our friends unfortunately did. And so it's really tough growing up. So anything that you would think of people that are raised in specifically the south side or even the west side of Chicago, I experienced. And then unfortunately, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't know at the time why we were moving to Atlanta, Georgia, but it was because I came to find out that my dad was getting indicted and ended up going to federal prison. So I think for me, not having my father during those very formative years in high school, and as I'm, becoming a young man, playing sports, looking to get that kind of assurance and kind of guidance that parents are supposed to foster. That was very challenging, but it really taught me the ability to be a go-getter and to not let any impediments stop me from getting to the goals that I set for myself. So I'm going to say those things.
Yeah. And as you're describing growing up in the south side of Chicago, and you're saying whatever folks may be envisioning, I'm picturing lots of drugs, gun violence, and just needing to grow up in an environment like that. And what I'm drawn to is what you were saying about how your parents were able to shield you from that. What, in hindsight now, for parents listening, was helpful for you growing up with? What did your parents do?
Yeah. So as I alluded to earlier, faith played a huge part of keeping us out of certain environments. One of the activities that's very prominent on the south side of Chicago is gang violence. I grew up in the Roseland neighborhoods in what's called the Hundreds. So, on the alleyway versus this alleyway, they had competing gangs, right? And my
Hmm.
dad actually had, stints with Gaines during his formative years and teenage years as well. So he was able to help, tell those folks to not have those activities happen
Hmm.
around our house. And so that was one thing. Two, keeping us in church. And so naturally just being in that environment kept us off the streets. And then three, sports. So sports was an outlet. I was actually a much better baseball player than I was basketball, although I ended up getting a basketball scholarship. Although my dad, I will say my dad, my first job out of college was with the Houston Astros. And my
Hmm.
dad told me once I mentioned to him that I landed a job with the Houston Astros, and he said, I knew you would always end up in baseball. And so
Yeah.
I didn't end up in baseball as a professional athlete, but I ended up in the major leagues in the front office. So I thought it was a very cool moment.
That's awesome. It's also so nice to end up in an industry that you feel really passionately about. Was there anything around like not playing basketball but playing baseball in the Black community?
So in Chicago, the leagues were very, very prominent. You had the Jackie Robinson League. There was a couple of leagues I can't, it escapes me right now. Like we grew up on baseball. My first
Mm.
Major League Baseball experience was actually at the old Comiskey Park. Frank
Mhm.
Thomas, I think Robin Ventura, he was a third baseman, and a couple of maybe Ozzie Guillen. They sponsored our little league team to come to
Wow.
Comiskey Park. So that was my
Wow.
first baseball experience, and I just like fell in love with the game of baseball. It's like I don't know, maybe between 5 and 8 or some age in between there, and fell in love with the sport of baseball. And then, fortunately, I became a Cubs fan. So if you don't think about Chicago baseball, obviously the
Yeah.
Sox and Cubs are rivals, and that was very. It was very interesting and weird for me to be a Cubs fan because the Cubs are on the north side, the Sox are on the south side, literally, I don't know, 20 or so blocks from where we grew up
Yeah.
and hung out.
Yeah. So you were pursuing your own path from a very young age.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was always just a hustler, so to speak, a go getter, just relentless pursuer of my goals and my dreams. Nothing was going to stop me from getting to where I needed to be. Whether it was, not having, adequate money because our
Hmm.
parents had challenges growing up on the south side of Chicago, having 6 kids and not being able to pay bills and taking cold showers in the wintertime because your gas gets cut off. I mean, it was
Yeah.
very tough, but I think I wouldn't trade. I wouldn't go back and redo it because it formed me into the man that I am today.
So I really resonate with some things that you're saying, Andrew. I grew up in Sierra Leone in West Africa. We grew up during a war. It's the seventh poorest country in the world. We also didn't have hot water. And a lot of these things have formed a ton of resilience in me. And so I'm so curious for you, where do you feel this go-getterness and resilience really comes from? If there were any experiences or if you have a sense of where that evolved from in you.
I think my dad. I mean, I can recall one time walking. I don't know how he did it, but we didn't have money. It was my birthday, and he really wanted me to get these Deion Sanders shoes. They were like, the prized possession in the South Side of Chicago. And I remember it was like snowing, and it was my birthday, and he came back, and he got me those shoes. And so I don't know how he did it. I never got to ask him. Unfortunately, he passed away at 56 in 2020.
Yeah.
But those traits fell down to me, and I think my dad was definitely someone I looked up to, and just given that his background and his upbringing wasn't the most favorable either, and so although he had those challenges, he didn't let that stop him from having some success in life
Yeah.
towards the end of his life.
It definitely comes out so clearly how much you look up to him. Did
Mhm.
you want to share anything further about him and his background?
Yeah, so obviously he grew up on the south side of Chicago as well. So he didn't graduate high school, although he was uh, from my mother's recollection, he was a pretty good football, and my uncle as well. He was a really good football player and could have had a shot. But again, the street life and getting caught up in activities just prevented him from taking that leap. I think, which naturally had additional dominoes, as he grew older, that myself and my siblings had to reap the ramifications of those decisions and his choices, right?
Yeah.
So, despite that, I mean, he was a wonderful father. He provided for us and my four sisters and my brother. He passed away a couple years ago as well. Um, he was always there. That's one thing I can say about my father. Although there wasn't, always the best circumstances from living and financial and all those things, but he was always present. And so that's what I like to say about my father. And also, when he went to federal prison after we moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
How old were you then, Andrew? Were you in high
So
school,
we
you
moved
said?
to Atlanta, Georgia, at the start of my high school. So I was about 15 at the
Mhm.
time we moved to Chicago, and then the following year is actually when the feds came and he went off to prison. He did a total of about 18 months, I think my mother said. I
Mhm.
think that's what I remember as well. So yeah.
And you were going to say one thing about him, even when you had moved to Atlanta, is
Oh yeah. So if you think about how some of his traits of resiliency and the go-getterness, fell down, like the apple falls doesn't fall too far
Mhm.
from the tree. How that actually showed up in my life is actually when he was in prison. I play AAU basketball, and so the team that I joined was literally on the opposite side of Atlanta, with Atlanta traffic. I don't know, probably like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour trip. And so my mother, given that my dad was in prison, wasn't able to, drive me to practices, midweek when, she had four girls to attend to
yeah.
and provide for, right? Because my dad was in prison. And I just found a way. And so what I did was I realized that there was a local bus station, about 10 minutes, 5, 10 minutes from our house. So I told myself I can get my mom to drop me off at the bus station. That bus took me downtown to mid Atlanta. So I got on the train station, went up to Doraville, got off which was the closest stop to
Yeah.
my coach's home. And his brother, who I played, and one of my best friends, we play AAU basketball with, he would pick me up from the train station, and then we would drive up to that practice site. And I think it was like Centennial or something like that. And so,
Yeah.
again, just an example of not letting any challenges get in my way of getting to where I needed to be.
Yeah. And I see the determination and focus, and no challenge is going to stop you in your eyes right now as you're talking about it.
Yeah, as
Uh,
long as I have air in my lungs, and I'm the Creator gives me time on this earth, I think anything can be accomplished. Not in the, I don't think you can be 5'2" and play in the NBA, right? Not in that
yeah.
sense, right? But there are some things that are achievable for anyone, if they're willing to go get it.
Yeah. And it just makes me think about how I think we maybe look at challenges as, oh no, we get stressed out about them. And it's so beautiful to see how a challenge has made you so much stronger. And I totally agree with, I feel the same with my experiences growing up. They've
Mhm.
given me so much perspective, and I wouldn't really trade my upbringing for the world. It's made me who I am today.
Yeah, I
And
think.
it's not that they're not hard periods to go through, but they really do. They are character building in a way that's really valuable.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like, trials build character, and care. And also through those trials build patience and endurance, right? So, like, again, I wouldn't, I'm not like
It's not, and
jumping
we're
up for
not
joy, right?
glorifying
Like, oh,
it.
I went
Right.
through the struggle. Like, it's not like a badge of honor. It's just,
Yeah.
you can't choose the cards that are dealt, and so you have to
Yeah.
play the hand that you have.
Yeah, and you can just see there's something to appreciate in it. Made you who you are today. So I'm hearing some of the formative moments for you loud and clear, Andrew. This may be when you were 5 or 6, when these baseball players came and got you so excited about baseball. I'm
Mhm.
obviously hearing the thread of your dad throughout your upbringing. He got you these shoes, showed you resilience, reliability, hard work. And then I'm hearing a lot of your playing sports in high school as well. Where did your knack for entrepreneurship come from?
Um, desperation. So growing up in Chicago, there was a penny store, was we used to
Mhm.
call it. It's basically it's a candy store, like on like corners in the hood.
Yeah.
Uh, so what I did, and what my parents helped me do, was like, hey, if you want to earn money for this and this, then you need to make a way, which is the theme of
Yeah.
what I've been saying so far. And so I packaged up, candy, like penny candy, Chico sticks was a big thing in Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. And I sold that in school during playtime, recess, intermissions, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how I, earned money. So from a very young boy, I think that was like fourth grade, fifth grade,
Mm-hmm.
probably between third and fifth grade. That was like my starting point of like entrepreneurship. And then even in college, I did some things on the side to generate income, right? I don't come
Yeah.
from a safety net, so I couldn't tap on mom and dad to say, hey, I need, X, although they did, times, provide funds. But, when you're playing basketball in college and, you're a growing boy, you need to eat, right? Those calories, you lose calories pretty fast when you have 533 practices, individual weights, et cetera, et cetera. And so from college experience, doing things on the side, I launched into kind of a cosmetic brand that was started by my late grandfather. So even taking it
Wow.
further, like my grandfather had this cosmetic product that he had patented and et cetera, et cetera. So I jump started that once I was working with the Houston Astros, and then just kind of took it
Transition.
from there.
And today, here we are. You're the founder and CEO of LiveChair Health. And I love the community aspect of providing healthcare to folks and incorporating folks that you see on a day to day, like your barber. But we know that you unfortunately suffered the loss of your dad, which caused you to pivot. And so, if you're okay with it, I'd love to start with where you had started with LiveChair Health before the healthcare pivot.
Yeah. So my co-founders and I, we had a pain point of scheduling and paying for haircuts. Right. This was back in the infant days before like scheduling and booking was a thing. There's a lot of platforms out there that have, done a really good job. And so 2015, 2016, my good friend Michael DeVore had like the original concept of like just like scheduling, and I think it was just like scheduling, right? And so I came on board 2016, and then we like really like jump started in 2018, brought on some other co-founders, and we were growing this scheduling and payment. It was a scheduling, payment processing, CRM, marketing tool, et cetera, et cetera. It was really robust, at least at that time. The systems that are out now are just on a whole nother level, and so. We were building that, and then as we were building that platform, one of my co-founders, Dr. Peter Blair, was researching health disparities, and I think he did some work at Harvard where it said, engagement, low engagement for the population, African American men that we were seeing again and again from our scheduling and booking tool, looking at the data on the back end. And so we said to ourselves, if health plans and health systems have a hard time reaching and engaging their population, why not use the barbershops at the time as a bridge? And concurrently, my dad's health was declining. And so he was going in and out of the hospital. And, I just looked at myself and, my team, and I said, hey, we have to do this, right? I think it was like Dr. Blair like really pushed me. He was like, hey, like, if we're not doing healthcare, what are we doing, right?
Yeah.
And so I took a long weekend to say, although our business is growing, like I feel like this is the right thing to do. And turns out there's a huge market for it too, by the way. So we made a pivot.
What I love about it too is the fact that you're solving a real problem in a market that you quite clearly understand. But before we go into, I want to learn all about what you're doing today with LiveChair Health. Let's talk a little bit about your dad. And like with every hero's journey, there is a tragedy, and you lost your dad. What happened?
Yeah. So starting from the roots, I would say lack of preventative care. So not going to your annual wellness visits, right? But waiting to, and this is common amongst Black men, but I would just say men in general, waiting until there's some catastrophic episode to go to urgent care or the emergency room. So I'd say that's number one. Lifestyle choices, right? Diet, exercise, taking care of your mental health. And it's or managing stress. And it's hard when you're disadvantaged from an income standpoint and you have bills and you have now what they label social determinants of health. I don't know if that was the label when he was growing up, but that's what he experienced, right? Childhood trauma, very tumultuous background growing up. And so, yeah, I would say those things, right? So some of the issues were self-inflicted, right? So not managing stress, inadequate eating and dieting, nutrition, right? Lack of exercise. And I think some of it was not getting care in the appropriate settings from a preventative standpoint and waiting too late after the condition had, exacerbated. So I would say those two things or three things would be the reason why I think his health declined.
Was it cancer?
No, he actually passed away from congestive heart failure. His heart was operating. I think the last time I saw him was less than like 7%, and it was just a miracle that he lasted for as long as he did after like multiple stints with almost every imaginable specialist doctor, in the hospital. But he lasted, I think, maybe a year after one of his episodes. And but yeah, when your heart is operating that low, it's it's only a matter of time.
And we discovered it late.
Yeah, I think we discovered it late. I don't know what he was doing when he was like 30 or like 27, but the time that I was in the house with him, I don't think I ever seen my dad like work out and say, hey, let's drink some beet juice, right? Like those things happen.
Hey, I don't even drink beet juice right now. So
hey, if you get a juicer, you put an apple, a lemon, you won't even taste
some
it,
beets.
and you'll just get all the beets. So
okay.
And that's free. So
yeah, I love that, and I love even going back to the beginning. You saying that you drink tea and you like to eat healthily, so incorporating all of that for ourselves. How was that for your family? How did you guys go through the grief and pain?
I didn't take as much time off to like really grieve and to like let the situation marinate in terms of like how it affected my psyche, how it affected my mood, how it affected my response to people, et cetera, because we're running a startup. You're just going. And so I think that is a learning for me and other entrepreneurs to take time, right? Take time. And this is also why the team is important because during that period, I really didn't have the support system when we made the pivot, just because we hadn't raised capital and people couldn't just tap into their savings that they've had since to like say, hey, I'm going to do this full time. And so I had some corporate success and was able to do that, but some other folks early in the journey wasn't able to do that. And so looking in hindsight, I wish I would have taken more time versus just kind of getting over it and jumping back into the hustle and bustle of running a startup in life. And so obviously my mom, took it the worst, given that she's known my dad all his life, basically.
Makes sense. For some folks, even they prefer to just go get back into work and almost numb the feelings out and just move on. I think that's something that has served us in past of moving on with our lives. But there's also so much value to actually processing the feeling so we can let it go and grow from it. Do you feel like you've now had a chance to process?
Yeah, I do believe now actually getting counseling that, anything you suppress, eventually there's going to be some trigger that elevates whatever you suppress. Because at the end of the day, we're not cogs, we're not machines, we're not, chat GPT bots. We are human beings with emotions and feelings and I know feelings gets a negative word, but like I'm actually realizing that feelings really matter, especially now that I have, 2 kids, I have a wife. Like that is extremely important, right? Because given my story, very like hard-nosed, hard worker, no excuses, but that doesn't always translate to, running a successful household, right? You have to be attuned to your 5-year-old's feelings. And so I'm able to deal with it better now because I have, received counseling, just wisdom and guidance for inner circle that I have that hold me accountable and tell me, hey, it's okay to grieve. It's a trait that can bring healing, and I've seen it happen.
1000%. I love this of the only way out is through. and whatever we resist persists. And if we
Precisely.
don't take the time to process, it inevitably comes up. Like you mentioned, having kids. And so I'm really glad that you took the time to get counseling. For others going through grief of a loved one that's really close. In your case, your dad was extremely important to you. What have you learned about grieving and healing that you can share?
Take the time, right? Like actually take the time, whether that's a week, a day, or like you know best how much time is needed. As I mentioned, I didn't take the time, and so it had other ramifications that showed up in other areas. Two, one out of one people die, right? And so death is a natural result of living on this earth. And so do all that you can, right? From healthy habits, all the things that keep you here long enough, but realize that, there might be a future where things get better, right? And so I don't know how that manifests and shows up in someone's life, but maybe people gather around and say, hey, let's be more appreciative of our family, because we never know when they're when they're closer to the checkout line, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it could be, let me not harbor so much bitterness, because again, like, who knows if Sally or Susie or whoever is going to get cancer, and then this is the last few moments that I have with them. And so I think death and grieving can bring about some of those potential outcomes.
And then also about feelings, you mentioned that feelings can get a negative rep, but you're seeing, being a founder, CEO, and having a wife and kids, that feelings are actually important. What are you learning there?
One of the things that's served me really well is reading just an inordinate amount of emotional intelligence. And so I think, one of the things that you'll learn in EQ books is the ability to tap into your feelings, right? Because if someone, there's an old adage that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think that's the biggest lie ever, right? There are still things that impact me today from what someone said 12 years ago. And so I'm very cautious with words. And so feelings, right? Like, hey, someone just said this to you. Like, how did that make you feel? And it's okay to be emotional. Now, it's not okay to use those emotions to destroy yourself because of choices you make because of what someone said, right? But address them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say really tapping into my feelings more than I ever thought I would be. Like if I'm having a long work week, right? And there's been challenges with, the management team, or like there's a fire, tapping into like, hey, how does this week make you feel versus last week where those fires didn't come up? Taking inventory, right? So I'm really taking inventory more because of this emphasis on tapping into my feelings.
Yeah. And to build on that, from my experience, I do hear about how feelings are a form of weakness, and you must power through and push through and be a brick and get through every situation. But for me, it feels like a source of strength, of being able to connect with another human at work, for instance, of, hey, you may be going through something. How are you feeling? And how can you process that? And it gets you closer to this person. Or if you have a conflict with a co-founder or someone else, talking through it from a sense of openness. And there's a lot of courage in transparently sharing how something makes you feel, can bring you really close together and open up a variety of possibilities in terms of solutions that you may not be as aware of. And then same in personal life with family, especially kids are so wonderful. They're just an open book, right? And then we somewhere learn to close off and shut down our emotions and our feelings. And I think kids are such a great teacher of how being open and being just completely vulnerable is such a beautiful thing, because you can share and folks can try and meet you where you're at. So to me, in my experience, feelings are a source of strength and being able to process them and figure out what's important and why to you.
Yeah, and the person that says like feelings aren't important, just run through the brick wall. But like implicit in that statement is feelings, right? You're saying run through a brick wall because you feel some type of way about not running in the brick wall, right? So if you like really dissect that statement, even people that have that worldview, as I would term it, they're tapping into feelings as well. They are just maybe not tapping into the feelings from an emotional like lens, right? but they're still exhibiting feelings. You can't escape it. Like you're a human. Like again, you're not a bot, right? You're a human. Like if you don't have feelings, then I can't even say you don't have. Everyone has feelings. It's just like
Yeah.
it's a matter of how you actually allow feelings to influence your decisions is where it really gets murky, right? Because if you operate solely on feelings, you will lead you that will take you down the road to destruction, right? Because there's a lot of things I don't feel like doing. Or let's go back to the
Yeah.
children. My
Coming to
daughter,
discipline.
she's 5 or she's about to be 6, and she doesn't feel like going to school many mornings. Right? Should I just say, oh, okay, because you don't feel like going to school, you can just stay here and not learn and no, right? Like your feelings don't determine that. I understand how you're feeling this way because you're tired, right? And I understand that. So maybe I'll put you to bed a little bit earlier, right? So you don't feel as tired the next morning, right? So like express the feelings, address the feelings, and then have solve for the feelings is how I would look at it.
Great advice. Love it. Beautiful. All right. With that, shall we get back to LiveChair Health?
Oh, LiveChair Health. Forgot all about it. Sorry.
I'm so excited to learn about where y'all have pivoted to. Tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so the original concept was training barbers to take blood pressure readings and like really using those, what we call liaisons, as access points for African American men at the time. Since, our original pivot back in 2020 wasn't the most opportune time to pivot, given that it was a world pandemic.
Yeah.
But we made the pivot nonetheless. And so now we actually have morphed beyond just barbershops. So we work with what I like to say is wherever people live, work, play, and as some people say, like worship, et cetera, that's where LiveChair Health sets up infrastructure. And then we use those channels as access points to reach a hard to reach population, right? Most of the members that we're serving from health plans are some of their hardest to reach members, or just members that are not engaged for various reasons, right? It could be like distrust of the healthcare system, which, from an African-American standpoint, there are various episodes in our country's history that does allow for that feeling, right? That someone has. And so, again, expanding our community hubs, also just expanding our infrastructure, right? So we currently use what's called community health workers to augment these hubs, in addition to having a call center team, et cetera, et cetera. And then just however, people like to be reached, right? We don't really take a monolithic approach to this is how you have to reach people because everyone is different, right? And so our system now is really built from an omni-channel approach, and we've found that to be very successful.
Where in the U.S. are you operating?
Currently live in Maryland, Los Angeles, and we are soon to be launching in Tennessee, DC, and North Carolina. So those are the upcoming markets.
Awesome. And understanding, is it mainly preventative healthcare?
Yeah, I would look at, so we bucket it in 3 pillars. So preventative, social, and administrative. So preventative, think of anything from annual wellness visits to preventative screenings, preventative, dieting and nutrition and managing mental health, right? Social. So most of the population that we serve right now is purely Medicaid. And so there are social determinants of health barriers that keep people from taking that next step in their health journey. And so we try to close those social determinants of health gap differently than how some other platforms do it, which is kind of part of our secret sauce. And then administrative. So helping plans recertify members. Now, that's a benefit for the plan, but the benefit for the member is, let's take Medicaid, for example. If you lose coverage because you don't redetermine, then you say you need care and you're not properly insured. Well, now that bill that could have been subsidized, it's now on your plate, right, to fund. And there can be an entirely new episode around medical bills and how that affects people's health, et cetera, et cetera. But
yeah, I'm so curious to know what you're learning about the social determinants of healthcare and how we bridge that gap, particularly for underserved communities.
I think there's a misnomer in healthcare that people just don't want to do things, but like that prescriptive is I think why we have the issues that we do in our country and more poignantly in healthcare. And so if someone, you think about it, right? If you have a single mother in, an urban city that has two kids, she has a job, maybe two jobs, and the closest primary care provider is, 2 miles off the bus line because she doesn't have transportation. Like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You think she's going to attend her PCP appointment when, there's still, inadequacy in food and maybe housing and some other challenges? Like, just no. And so learning that those drivers, honestly, I think it's been said, right? Like, your zip code is a predictor of your life expectancy more than like maybe any other like predictor.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can address those social determinants of health, which we can, we have the money, we're spending money on, a bunch of things is very useless, if I'm very frank. So we have the money to address these issues. It's really just a matter of, like how much people care.
So if there are 3 things that we can do to bridge this gap, what would they be?
I think a lot of it does, I don't want to say policy, but policies do impact people. I mean, it just does, right? So I would say from a policy perspective, that's probably like a meta thing that you can't control with voting, but what if your person doesn't get in office? So I look at it on the micro, right? So on the micro, you like watching this video can be the catalyst for change in your neighborhood. And so think about serving at, local nonprofits or giving money to these nonprofits that are doing wonderful work that can bolster some of the services and items that they have to provide for organizations. I would say those two, right? So, macro, maybe policy, voting, but because you can't control who's in office, micro, you can't control what you do, how you spend your time, how you spend your money, and how you leverage your talents. So
got it. And any particular services we want to make sure are more available with the NGOs, for instance?
I think food is key, right? Given what I said earlier about kind of my penchant for teas and eating healthy and even beet juice. I think there's one of our brain trust doctors that says healthcare, like eating right or food is like king, and then like exercise is queen, and then everything else comes into play. But I think nutrition, exercise, and diet is extremely important. So I would emphasize that, mental health, and economic upward mobility, the ability for people to climb up the economic ladder. Because, to be honest with you, I know there are challenges even when you look at, higher income folks, right? That, they're not taking care of their health. But, when you have the means to at least not think about survival mode, you can, spend more time on, taking care of your health.
That makes a ton of sense. How about in community care? What are you seeing as the biggest opportunities for community care and challenges for community care?
Yeah, so opportunities from a Medicaid standpoint, there's a lot of density in the neighborhoods because, most Medicaid folks live in the same, they live in the same area. And so that's number one, which actually gives us incredible leverage to help us like scale up our operations. I think the challenge, honestly, I don't see that many challenges. And maybe I have to think about it a little bit more. You can get incredible from community liaisons and people that look and feel and talk like the folks that we're engaging. So I think that trust is very important. So that's another like pro. Cons, I think if I'm just talking about it from a LiveChair health perspective, or people that have tried to do this in the past, is really scale. Like, how do you like scale up these operations? And I do think we have cracked that nut.
So it sounds like there's opportunity here to reach folks who were so hard to reach before. And then the nut to crack is, how do you implement the structures to have this be a consistent and stable infrastructure to scale?
Yeah, I mean, showing up frequently to where people live, work, play, pray, et cetera, is very important. And not just, a lot of, I see a lot of I'll just use the word organizations that attempt to do this, but it's so sporadic that it doesn't have the lasting impact, right?
Yeah,
versus
it's not consistent.
It's not consistent, right? So, if your husband, right, only sees you 2 times a month, and some other husband, sees their wife, 19 times a month or every day, right? Who do you think is going to have a more ingrained and loving relationship that galvanizes that person to take that next action, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of organizations are kidding themselves that their outreach methods that haven't worked, right, are going to now work for some things like some of the big healthcare issues.
Yeah. And then as you're saying that, one thing that comes to mind is probably also cracking the nut of training the barbers, training the folks at where you pray, training the folks at your gym, etc.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we are trying to figure out is how do we get those certifications and credentials for these kind of community liaisons where they can
Mm-hmm.
earn supplemental income because again there's opportunity costs. If you're doing X, you can't do Y. And so we understand
Yeah.
that there's opportunity costs, which is why we staff up and augment a lot of these hubs with our team currently. But
Very
there
cool.
is a lot of opportunities for training, and I think there's like reimbursements for some of these things that non kind of clinical folks can
Mm-hmm.
do that will have massive impacts across not just LiveChair Health, but the healthcare system overall.
Yeah. Where do you see community health evolving into? Like, me, if 10 years is too far down the line to predict or have thoughts about, how about 5 years or 2 years from now?
Like community health, I do
Care.
think you can leverage. So think about like transportation, for example. If transportation is a barrier, and you have, I don't know if I want to give this away because it's an opportunity for us, but I'll share it because I think competition is good. And at the end of
Yeah,
the
it's
day,
healthy.
someone still has to like execute on an idea. Like ideas are a dime a dozen, but execution is what matters. So I'll just say it, right? So you think about transportation being a barrier in low income populations, but there's a plethora of telehealth solutions. So why not have like telehealth options at underutilized spaces in the community where the single mother doesn't have to
Travel.
go down to get on a bus, get off a bus, hour trip. Maybe she can go to this underutilized resource or space that's
Mm-hmm.
equipped with telehealth, and then they can, has devices and all that, and they can just get their care. They being that family, and then other families in the community can just go like down the street, right, to get their care. So I think that's a huge opportunity because the infrastructure is there from a telehealth perspective, right? There are so many companies out there that do this work. So the infrastructure is there. And then I think too, if we can improve, so our motto is building stronger, stable, more healthier communities.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the economic upward mobility is very important, right? If you take someone living in, I don't know, like a black family living in Brentwood, California, or California versus, West Baltimore, right? Those economic factors are going to drive health you know, more than anything else, right? So I think that upward mobility is very important to improve community care or alleviate it or eliminate it. The problems we see within community care.
Yeah, and I see that being addressed both by a combination of government, organizations, folks like LiveChair Health, all coming together and getting integrated. I'm really excited for community healthcare. I think there is a big opportunity there to just meet more people where they're at, as opposed to expecting folks to make the time. When we talk about how folks who are working multiple jobs don't have as much time and trying to just put food on the table or avoid dangerous situations depending on what neighborhoods they're growing up in. So very excited for all of this. Folks can find you at LiveChair Health, the website.
Yep.
Anything else you want to shout out?
Yeah, so www.livechair.co is the website, and LiveChair Inc is our tag on all of our social media channels. So would definitely recommend and appreciate everyone follow us to stay up to date on all things LiveChair Health as we come to a city near you.
Amazing. And then let's get it back to you, Andrew, before I let you go. So this hero has been through a lot. What's important to you these days?
Relishing in the beauty of the mundane. And what I mean by that is, people gripe about their kids complaining or like groaning about XYZ, fill in a blank, right? But, one day, like you're going to be an empty nester and you're going to wish you had more of those moments, right? And so relishing in the fact that, I'm blessed to have a 6-year-old, daughter that complains, right? And I get an opportunity to coach her and become a productive citizen that helps our country and our society flourishes. Also, the beauty of appreciating the little things. So I was at a conference in Orlando last month. I deplaned. I just lost hearing in my right ear. And so it was so odd. I hadn't, like, no symptoms, nothing happened, like literally just lost hearing. So I chucked it up to it maybe being like air pressure or whatever the case may be. That wasn't the case. Went to an audiologist, had an exam. Audiologist recommended I see an ENT. Saw the ENT. He was like, hey, your ear is like basically dead. And so put me on some meds, thankfully, and shout out to modern medicine and Providence. I've started to retain my hearing, but it's still unintelligible right now. And so just thinking about having a good ear that I can hear out, right? Before, I never gave thanks to like being able to hear, right? Because there are some people that unfortunately aren't able to hear, or taking a shower. Like, I can reach underneath my arms and make sure I'm not passing funk to the community, right? And but some people can't do that, right? And I know it's like I'm just being a little humorous with it, but like really appreciating the little things that have that makes life more joyful, because life isn't a party, it isn't. There is going to be boring days. There is going to be routine, rudimentary things that happen that is just a part of the journey of life.
I have a big smile on my face because I so agree with that. It's such an important reminder every day. The things we don't think about, like our hearts beating, we don't think about that.
Yeah, because my dad's heart's not beating right now, Exactly. And so I would love to have another 20 or 30 years with him to see him to see me building this company, or have him here to be able to inculcate and help my sisters grow, right? And so it's sorry to chime in, but
no, it's really important. And on that note, Andrew, if your dad was here, what would you say to him?
Go to your doctor. go to your doctor, man. We should. I think in this country, like, as men, like, we love sports. We should say, hey, you're not allowed to watch any sports. Like, we should like strike up a deal with like all the like networks and say, hey, no sports, no fun activities until you go to your doctor, so you at least have a baseline, right? I don't think ignorance is bliss, right? You should know, what's happening to you. And there's like this myth, oh, I'm healthy. Like, how do you determine what's going on inside of your body? You don't know that.
You have no idea.
You have no idea. So anyway, that I will not get on that soapbox, because we'll extend this by another.
That'll be for another episode. Go to your doctor and take care of your mental health, and eat, and make sure to sleep enough.
Yeah, and accountability, right? And so I think accountability is important, because these things, like, this is one edict or exhortation that the person it impacts is the person in the mirror, right? So it impacts immediately the person in the mirror, but think about how it impacts people around you if you don't do those things, right? So like my mother, for example, had to take care of my dad, take him to dialysis. So there's cost to that, purchase additional medication, right? So there is a cost to being unhealthy, right? Mm-hmm. And so, again, conversation for another day, but I'll leave it there.
Last question. How are you taking care of yourself, and what can we all steal from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a maniac, so I don't, hey.
Tell us. Yeah, Walk us through your day. You wake up at what time? How do you exercise? What else are you drinking besides beet juice?
Yeah, no, it's good. So I wake up every morning at 6:30. I do devotion. So that's the first thing. I do devotion and meditation and prayer. Have my cup of tea. I specifically drink tea in the morning. And then after I take my daughter to school around 7:20, I work out. Finish up devotion, and then I work out. And then I typically start, and in between this, right, I have this mobile device. So I'm like answering emails or checking Slack after my devotion time, right? So I'm like checking emails, like in a carpool. I'm just sitting there for 10 minutes. So I'm like checking Slack, talking to my daughter. And then once I get home, I do my workout. So, because if I don't do my workout as the day gets going, I'm just not going to do it. So I do my workout. I work out 5 days a week.
Are you strength, running, cardio?
I do 30 minutes a day, HIIT cardio. and weight training, which incorporates, it's a 50-50. So it does HIIT and then weight training. And so that takes care of my entire body. And then on Friday, I'll work out a little bit longer. And then from there, I actually work when I'm working. So I'm not on social media. I'm just glued to my desk from like, I don't know, 8:40 to until 5:10. I go pick up my daughter and my son to give my wife a break, who, is seeing patients all day. And then we have family time. So from, I don't know, 5:45 to 8 o'clock, like it's no work, family time, helping my wife get the kids ready for bed. And then obviously we're having dinner in that time period. Then I spend some time with the wife. And I try to get some more work done, to shut down around like 12 o'clock, and try to get 6 to 7 hours of sleep. But I think it's important, right? Like if you actually work when you're supposed to be working, you can get a lot done, right? So I think my social media time is probably like 3 minutes a day, because like in transition, I'll like check in or something. But it's like, I don't know. But on a weekend, obviously, I take a Sabbath on, not because I'm a Jew or anything like that, but Saturday is my day. To just rest. Great. I don't do any work. So no work on Saturday, full family time. And then Sunday, I'm back at it. So, the early days, I was probably working, I don't know, 90 to 100 hours a week, like getting it started. So now I'm about around 60, 70. But I try to stay at the 60 hours. Yeah. Because I'm more efficient.
Yeah, I love it.
Sorry, that was a long-winded one.
No, that was wonderful. That's great. Yeah. I love that you're really balanced, right? You're taking care of your health, your personal health. You're taking care of making sure you're spending time with people you love. And then you're really focused when you're working. This trick of just when you're working and no other distractions is so simple, really hard to execute, but so simple and so effective. I also take a one day off, try to have no screen time. I give my husband my phone. I'm like, don't give me the phone.
I think it is wonderful for the soul, for the mental health, and just for rejuvenation, so that you can be your best self the next week. Also, you asked me about juices.
Tell me about food.
Say again, food?
Yeah, your diet.
Yeah. So food. So I don't consume sugar. No fried foods. No fast foods. I try to stay away from anything frozen, and eat very clean. Part of that was prompted because I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease like a couple years ago. I have a very mild form. It's controlled, I think, because of my lifestyle. So that prompted me to like really kind of be even more extreme, so to speak. But I'm on a diet called the SCD, and so it is not for the faint of heart, right? It's called the SCD. But I will tell you,
what does it mean, SCD?
Specific carbohydrate diet, and so no carbs. No grains, no sugar, no fast food, no fried foods, right?
Is it like keto?
No, it's a little bit more intense than keto.
Okay.
You should look it up. It's not for the faint of the heart. A lot of the items you have to, you have to make yourself, right? And so my wife helps out a lot in terms of, instead of like for pancakes or waffles, I'll use almond flour with honey, and then a ripe banana, and mix it up, and then just put it on the grill. Oh, not the grill. The
skillet.
The waffle maker. Yeah, the skillet. The waffle maker. And then I'll put honey right in a container, and then melt it down, and then add a little cinnamon, and vanilla extract, and then that's my syrup and my sweetener. So
makes sense. Why no frozen food?
Check out the ingredients. If you check out the ingredients.
What about like you said no sugar whatsoever, so no fruits. So you wouldn't even eat frozen fruits.
Yes. So yes.
Because I eat a lot of frozen fruit. That's why I'm asking.
No. So technically, yes, fruit. Yeah, there is like natural sugar and fruit. So what I'd say, like no sugars, like no cane sugar, no artificial sugars. Like my sweetener for everything is honey. And so it's not that I won't have, like, I'll cheat. Obviously, I'm not perfect, guys. So like I will have, like, sometimes I'll drive by Krispy Kreme with my wife, and I say, hey, today is that day, right? But you got to have that balance.
Cheat day.
I got to have balance. And look, I like to drink spirits and wine, right? But in moderation. So that's like my caveat. I like to do that in moderation, right? And so
Yeah.
that provides me like the fun things in life.
Yeah. Life isn't a lab that's so sterile and perfect. Enjoy
Now,
sometimes it,
now you
but
got to enjoy.
all
So like
within limits.
those are my outlets, right? So glass of wine or nice bourbon, like that. Those are my things. Again, in moderation, and I think self control is important.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. I'll go look up this diet. I really also enjoyed learning about what you're building. And thank you for sharing more about your dad and what growing up and just aspects of you. This was great.
Absolutely, Jennifer. Thank you for having me on, and shout out to everyone listening to this. Go be the best you.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave a review and share.